Before we begin, I need to ask, where are you watching from, and what time is it right now? Drop your location in the comments. Tonight on Silent Fears, we're diving into 4 disturbing incidents from Ontario's most isolated towns. These stories are real, though names and specific details have been changed to protect privacy. What you're about to hear comes from people who experience something they still can't explain. So turn off your lights, put in your earbuds, and whatever you do, don't watch alone. Let's begin. March 3rd, 2024, 11:47 p.m. Temperature gauge on my Freightliner spiked from normal to danger zone in under 2 minutes, right past the Chapleau turnoff on Highway 101. I've been hauling lumber from Thunder Bay to North Bay for 15 years now, and this rig's never given me a lick of trouble. But watching that needle climb into the red while I'm alone on one of the most isolated stretches of highway in Ontario, that'll get your attention real quick. Check engine light blazed across the dash like a warning I couldn't ignore. I had maybe 10 minutes before something expensive happened under that hood, maybe less. There's a reason experienced drivers up here say you don't mess around with overheating in the winter, because if your engine seizes in -20 weather 100 kilometers from the nearest town, you're not just looking at a repair bill, you're looking at a survival situation. The cold up here doesn't care about your schedule or your pride. I spotted an old logging road on my GPS and made the turn. Cell service dropped to SOS only the second my wheels left the pavement. That's normal for this area. The Canadian Shield doesn't play nice with cell towers, but it still makes you aware of how alone you really are out here. The CB radio had been standard trucker chatter on Channel 19, guys talking about road conditions and where the speed traps were set up. But the moment I turned onto that access road, it all went to static. White noise. I should have paid more attention to that. The logging road looked exactly like you'd expect. Frozen ruts carved deep by heavy equipment. Snow piled on both sides from plowing, gravel and mud mix underneath that was hard as concrete in the cold. Forestry companies use these roads during cutting season, but it's March. Nobody's working out here now. I pulled about half a kilometer in, far enough to be off the highway, but theoretically still visible from the main road if someone drove past. The engine was ticking and hissing. As it cooled, temperature gauge finally starting its slow descent back toward normal. Just past midnight by then. Through my windshield, there was nothing but jack pine and black spruce pressing in from all sides. That thick northern Ontario bush that extends for hundreds of kilometers with no towns, no houses, just crown land and old trap lines that haven't been checked in decades. My thermos of coffee from the Tim Hortons in Wawa had gone cold hours ago, and I had half a chicken sandwich left from the Flying J that I couldn't even taste anymore. The plan was straightforward, the kind of thing I'd done 100 times before. Wait 20 minutes. Let everything cool down proper, restart the engine, and make Timmins by 3 in the morning. Easy. Routine. Except my breath started fogging up inside the cab, even though the heater was running full blast. I checked the controls. Everything was maxed out. Blower on high. Temperature set to hottest setting, but the air coming through the vents felt barely warm. The temperature inside was dropping fast, and that made no sense because the engine was still hot. Residual heat should have been keeping the cab comfortable for at least another hour. That's when my GPS started acting strange. It showed me stationary on the logging road, which was accurate, but the distance reading to Chapleau kept jumping all over the place. 1 second it said 14.2 kilometers. Then it refreshed and showed 18.7, then 11.3. I figured it was a glitch from the heavy tree cover interfering with the satellite signal. Happens sometimes in dense bush. Tapped the screen a few times to reset it. The whole unit froze up, then displayed something that made my stomach drop. It showed me on a road that didn't exist on any map. just a gray line extending straight north into completely blank space where there should have been topographical features, lakes, elevation markers. Just nothing. When I looked up from the screen, there was another transport truck, sitting about 30 meters ahead of me. Same model as mine, same blue Freightliner cab, parked perpendicular across the narrow logging road, running lights glowing, engine clearly running because I could see exhaust vapor drifting up in my headlights. But that was impossible. There's no way another truck could have gotten past me on this road. It's too narrow for two vehicles. I would have seen headlights approaching, would have heard the engine, would have had to back up to let them pass. It was just there, like it had materialized out of the darkness. I flashed my high beams twice, standard trucker courtesy, asking if they needed assistance. No response. Flashed again. Nothing. Grabbed my CB handset and switched to channel 19. Keyed the mic and said I was northbound Lumber Hall, asked if anyone had ears on. The static broke and I heard my own voice come back through the speaker. Exact same words I'd just spoken, but delayed by maybe 2 seconds. Then it repeated. Then again. Multiple versions of my own voice asking if anyone copied, cascading and overlapping until it became incomprehensible noise. I dropped the handset on the passenger seat and just stared at the radio like it had betrayed me. The other truck's driver door swung open slow. Nobody stepped out. The door just hung there in space, interior light showing an empty cab. Nobody in the driver's seat, nobody in the sleeper berth visible behind it. I sat completely frozen, every instinct screaming at me to move, to leave. But I couldn't reverse half a kilometer in pitch darkness on a logging road this narrow without sliding into the ditch. One wrong move and I'd be stuck. And calling for a tow truck out here would take hours, even if I had cell service. Movement caught my eye in the passenger side mirror. Something was walking alongside the length of my 53-foot trailer, moving from the back toward the cab, staying just at the very edge of where my running lights created visibility. I couldn't see it, clearly just a shape, but the way it moved was wrong. Not walking like a person walks. It was stuttering forward, the way video footage skips frames when the file's corrupted, jerking ahead in increments instead of smooth motion. I hit the lock button for the passenger door and kept my eyes on that mirror. Whatever it was reached the gap between my trailer connection and the cab, and it stopped there. Just stopped. My passenger door handle rattled once, then again, harder. Then it went quiet, and I couldn't hear anything over the sound of my own breathing and the engine's cooling tick. My phone lit up on the dash where I'd left it charging. Text message notification from my own number. That's not possible, you can't text yourself, but there it was. 2 words in all caps. Stay inside. Another message came through immediately. Same number. Engine on. Then a third. Drive. But here's the thing about these big rigs. You don't just start them up when the engine's been running hot. The temperature gauge was still showing elevated temps. Starting it now could blow a head gasket, could crack the block, could seize the entire engine solid. That's a $15,000 repair minimum, and I'm an owner-operator, which means that money comes directly from my pocket, not some company's insurance. But the passenger window started fogging from the outside, condensation forming on the glass like something was breathing directly onto it. Through that fog, a handprint appeared, pressing against the window. Too large to be human, and there were too many fingers, 6 or 7. I couldn't count them clearly through the fog, but it was wrong. I started the engine. Didn't hesitate, didn't think about the cost. The check engine light came on instantly, blazing bright, and the temperature gauge shot straight back into the red zone. I shifted into reverse and started backing down that logging road, using only my mirrors. trying desperately to stay centered in those frozen ruts. Was going maybe 15 kilometers per hour. Any faster, and the trailer would start to swing, would jackknife or slide sideways into the trees. In my passenger side mirror, I watched the other truck's headlights go completely dark. The road ahead where it had been sitting went pitch black. Then in my driver's side mirror, I saw it following me. The other truck was reversing down the logging road behind me, matching my speed exactly, maintaining a consistent distance of about 10 meters. No driver visible in the cab. No one at the wheel. Just a truck moving backward in perfect synchronization with my own movements. The CB radio crackled back to life, and I heard my voice reading my own logbook entry from earlier in the night, the one I'd written down in my book, but never spoken out loud. March 3rd, 2024, 11:47 p.m. Engine temperature spiked just past the Chapleau turnoff on Highway 101. Word for word, exactly as I'd written it. I was maybe 200 meters from the highway when the truck behind me vanished from my mirrors. Just disappeared like it had never existed. But now there were lights in the trees on both sides of the logging road, moving parallel to my position, keeping perfect pace with my reversal. Not flashlights, not headlights. Just sourceless lights drifting between the tree trunks like they were floating on water. I reached Highway 101 and backed out onto the pavement without checking for traffic, which up here at 1 in the morning was a calculated risk because you might not see another vehicle for 30 minutes. Shifted into drive and punched the accelerator. The engine sounded like it was eating itself from the inside, grinding and knocking and making sounds no diesel should ever make. Smoke started pouring from under the hood, visible in my headlights as it drifted back over the windshield. I made it 6 kilometers south before the engine seized completely. Just locked up solid while I was doing 90. Coasted to a stop on the shoulder and everything went silent except for the ticking of cooling metal. Normal darkness returned. Normal cold. Normal empty highway. A swift truck blew past me a minute later, doing at least 100. Driver gave me a courtesy wave, like everything was fine, like this was just another breakdown on just another night. An OPP cruiser found me at 2:30 in the morning. Someone had called in a report of a smoking vehicle on a 101. Officer asked what happened, and I told him engine trouble. Left out every other detail because how do you explain the rest? What would I even say? The tow truck took 4 hours to arrive. Had to come all the way from Timmins. Driver's name was Jonathan, older guy who owns the garage in town. And he took one look under my hood and asked what in the hell I'd done to seize an engine like that. Said in 30 years of working on trucks, he'd never seen one locked up this completely. I paid for the tow, rode back with him in the cab of his wrecker. He talked the entire drive about hockey, about the Maple Leafs' chances this year, about how brutal the cold had been, about how much he hates driving Highway 101 at night because it's too dark and too empty and too easy to hit a moose. I barely said 10 words the whole trip. Insurance company investigated the claim and determined the engine seized due to catastrophic coolant system failure. But that made no sense because the truck had been fully serviced at a certified shop in Thunder Bay just 2 days before. Full inspection, all fluids topped off. Coolant system pressure tested and cleared. They disputed the claim entirely. $18,000 for a replacement engine and installation. Wiped out most of my savings for the year. I looked up that logging road later on satellite view, pulled it up on Google Earth on my laptop. The road's there on the map, marked as a forestry access road. Looks exactly like where I turned off. But when I tried to find it in Street View or on detailed Forestry Service maps, that specific access road doesn't appear in any official records. Those roads are supposed to be gated and locked outside of cutting season, chains across the entrance to keep people from wandering in and getting lost. The text messages are still on my phone. I've never deleted them. They still show the timestamp from that night, 12:14 a.m., all 3 messages. Stay inside. Engine on. Drive. But when I check my phone's notification log, there's no record of receiving any messages at that time. They're just there in the message thread, existing without any entry point. I don't drive Highway 101 anymore. I take the long route through Sudbury, even though it adds 4 hours to any northern run. The other drivers noticed? Nobody's asked me directly, but I hear the talk at truck stops, conversations that go quiet when I walk past, about drivers who won't take certain routes anymore, who insist on daylight driving only, who refuse specific loads that would put them on particular stretches of highway after dark. Last month I was at the Flying J in Wawa, fueling up and grabbing coffee, and I overheard 2 drivers talking at the next pump. They were discussing a freight liner that's been abandoned on a logging road off Highway 101 near Chapleau. Been sitting there for weeks, apparently. OPP can't figure out who owns it. The VIN doesn't match any registration database. There are no license plates mounted on it, no logbook left in the cab, nothing to identify the owner or the company. Just a truck sitting there with the driver's door hanging open and the battery run completely dead. One of the drivers laughed and said it was probably stolen, stripped for parts and dumped. The other one said he'd heard from someone else that there's actually 2 trucks there now, sitting side by side on that access road. I didn't ask questions. Paid for my coffee and diesel and left without saying a word to either of them. My replacement engine still runs hot. Jonathan's checked it 3 times, and he can't figure out why. Every diagnostic test comes back clean. Temperature sensor is fine, coolant system is fine, thermostat is fine, everything is functioning exactly as it should. But the gauge spikes randomly, always around midnight, always when I'm on northern routes. The engine itself is fine according to every test, but the gauge tells a different story. I keep a logbook out of habit, always have. It's just part of the job. But I don't log distances anymore. Don't trust them. Last entry I made was 3 weeks ago. April 19th, 2:13 a.m. Highway 17 between Sault Ste. Marie and Wawa. GPS showed me stationary for 11 minutes straight. I was doing 90 the entire time. I haven't written anything in that book since then. It's sitting in my passenger seat right now, unopened. Here's something they don't teach you in truck driving school, but every northern driver learns eventually. The Canadian Shield is old rock, some of the oldest exposed rock on the planet, over 2 billion years in some places. It does strange things to magnetic fields, to GPS signals, to radio transmissions. Compasses spin, electronics glitch. Experienced drivers know you don't rely solely on technology up here. You carry paper maps, you memorize landmarks, you trust your instincts. Because when your GPS fails at 1 in the morning on a logging road 300 kilometers from the nearest town, all that technology isn't worth the plastic it's housed in. Your survival depends on older knowledge, the kind that got people through this landscape long before satellites and cell towers existed. That's not superstition. That's just fact. Have any of you ever had your GPS show you on a road that doesn't exist on the map? Okay, so I'm probably going to get absolutely destroyed in the comments for this, but I need to tell someone what happened 3 weeks ago near Bancroft, and I swear to God, this is real. I'm typing this at 2 in the morning because I can't sleep, and my girlfriend Chloe is at her mom's place, and I'm alone in our apartment, and I just need to get this written down before I lose my mind completely. We're both in our mid-20s, live in Toronto, work boring office jobs, and we wanted a weekend away to see the fall colors and disconnect from everything. Found this cabin rental on Airbnb that looked perfect in the photos, rustic but comfortable, decent reviews, 4.8 stars. The host's description talked about how peaceful and secluded it was. how you could really unplug from city life. We should have paid more attention to the 2-star reviews, but who actually reads those, right? Everyone just skips to the good ones and convinces themselves the bad experiences were flukes. We left Toronto on a Friday afternoon, took the 401 east to Highway 115, then cut over to Highway 7 through Peterborough. The drive's pretty straightforward until you get past Peterborough and things start getting more rural, more spaced out, fewer chain restaurants and gas stations. Eventually, we hit Highway 28, heading north toward Bancroft. Total drive time was supposed to be around 3.5 hours, but we got lost because the host's directions were terrible. Just vague landmarks and unclear turn descriptions. Ended up stopping at a gas station in Maynooth to ask for help. The guy behind the counter was probably 60 years old, looked like he'd worked there his entire life. And when we showed him the address on my phone, he got this weird expression. Just stared at the screen for a second too long before looking back at us. Chloe asked him if he knew where it was, and he said yeah, he knew it. Then he asked us how long we were staying. And the way he asked it felt pointed, like he was hoping we'd say just one night. I told him the whole weekend, and he just nodded slowly and gave us directions. Didn't say anything else, didn't wish us a good trip, just went back to whatever he'd been doing before we walked in. The property was about 8 kilometers past Bancroft proper, down a dirt road that forked twice. The host's instructions said to take the left fork both times, which we did, driving deeper into Crown land near the Silent Lake area. Here's something most people don't know about Ontario's provincial parks and Crown land. You can be within a few kilometers of a major park like Silent Lake and still be completely isolated because the protected park boundaries don't include all the surrounding wilderness. There are thousands of private properties scattered through these areas, old hunting cabins and family cottages that have been grandfathered in, sitting on parcels of land that predate the modern park system. Some of them haven't been updated since they were built in the 60s and 70s. The cabin we'd rented was definitely one of those. It sat in a clearing surrounded by mixed hardwood trees and pine, older construction with wood siding that had seen better days, metal roof showing rust spots, stone chimney with mortar crumbling between the stones. The deck boards flexed under our weight when we walked across them, and several windows had cracks covered with peeling tape. Inside wasn't as bad as the exterior suggested. Open concept main room combining kitchen and living space. 1 bedroom off to the side, small bathroom, and a loft area you reached by climbing a wooden ladder. The furniture was all mismatched, like someone had furnished the place from yard sales over several decades. Couch with faded floral print, dining table with uneven legs that wobbled when you touched it. Appliances that looked like they were from the 80s. But everything seemed reasonably clean, no obvious dirt or garbage, just old. The host had left a welcome basket on the counter with local honey, a bag of coffee, and a handwritten note on lined paper that said to enjoy the silence, and reminded us there was no cell service, but the landline worked for emergencies. That's when we noticed the phone mounted on the kitchen wall. Old rotary dial phone, beige plastic yellowed with age, cord wrapped in what looked like 30 years of accumulated dust. I hadn't seen a working rotary phone outside of a museum in probably a decade. We unpacked our stuff. Chloe took about 50 photos of the place for Instagram because she loves that whole rustic aesthetic. And we spent the late afternoon just walking around the property. The silence the host had mentioned in the note wasn't peaceful. It was oppressive. No bird calls, no wind moving through the trees, no distant traffic sounds, nothing. Just dead air. Chloe mentioned it, and I brushed it off. Said it was October, so birds had migrated, and wind doesn't blow constantly. Made dinner around 7. Just pasta with jarred sauce and a bottle of red wine we'd brought from home. Very standard Toronto couple goes camping meal. We were planning to edit photos, get some sleep, wake up early to hike to Silent Lake, and catch the sunrise reflecting off the water. Around 9 at night, the landline rang. We both froze mid-conversation and just stared at that phone on the wall. Nobody knew we were here except the host, and we definitely hadn't given anyone this number because we didn't even know what the number was. It rang 4 times with that harsh mechanical bell sound that old phones make, then stopped. Chloe asked if I was going to answer it, and I said it already stopped, probably just a wrong number or crossed wires or something. Old phone systems do that. 10 minutes passed, and it rang again. This time I got up and answered, picked up the heavy receiver, and said hello. Complete silence on the other end. Not even a dial tone, just an open line with nothing on it. I said hello 2 more times, waited, then hung up. Chloe was already getting uncomfortable, kept checking her phone even though we both knew there was no service out here. She asked if we should just pack up and leave, drive back to Toronto tonight. I told her that was crazy. It's a 3.5-hour drive in the dark on roads we barely know. We'd already paid for the whole weekend. It was just a malfunctioning phone in an old cabin. We tried to distract ourselves by watching a movie on her laptop. She downloaded a few before we left, specifically because we knew we wouldn't have internet. Got about halfway through when the power flickered. Not a full outage, just a quick dip where all the lights dimmed for a second. Then it happened again. Then everything stabilized and seemed fine. The landline started ringing again, and this time it didn't stop. Just kept going and going. That mechanical bell clanging over and over. I walked over and unplugged the phone from the wall jack. Pulled the cord right out. The phone went silent in my hands, but the ringing continued from somewhere else in the cabin. From above us, from the loft. I grabbed my phone for the flashlight and climbed up the ladder. The loft was cramped, just enough space for a mattress on the floor, some cardboard storage boxes pushed against the walls, a few old blankets folded in the corner. The ringing was definitely louder up here, but I couldn't see a phone anywhere. Started checking inside the boxes, found Christmas ornaments, ancient board games, a stack of TV guides from the 90s. The ringing stopped right as I was about to give up and climb back down. That's when I saw it behind one of the boxes, partially hidden by a folded blanket. Another rotary phone, identical to the one downstairs, same beige color, same dust coating. But this one wasn't plugged into anything. No cord attached to it. No wall jack anywhere in the loft, just a phone sitting there with no possible power source. Then it rang while I was staring directly at it. The mechanical bell inside started rattling, and I was watching it happen. Watching a disconnected phone with no power source produce sound. I dropped it and basically fell down the ladder. Told Chloe we needed to leave right now. Didn't matter what time it was or how long the drive took. We threw everything into our bags without bothering to pack properly, didn't fold clothes or organize anything, just grabbed our stuff and ran to the car. Chloe's Subaru started without any problems, and as we backed out of the driveway, our headlights swept across the cabin's facade. Every window was dark except for the loft window, which now had a light on inside it, even though we never turned on any light up there and there were no electrical fixtures in that space at all. And in that lit window, we could both see a silhouette, just the upper body and head of someone standing there, looking out at us. Chloe didn't wait for me to say anything, just punched the accelerator and we flew. Down that dirt road way too fast, hit a massive rut that set off the tire pressure warning light. We didn't slow down, just kept going until we hit Highway 28, then Highway 7, then finally the 401. Drove straight back to Toronto and pulled into our apartment building's parking garage at 2 in the morning. We didn't speak the entire drive, except for one moment when Chloe asked if I'd seen someone in the window, and I said yes. We didn't contact the host, didn't leave a review, didn't report anything to Airbnb. just tried to pretend it never happened and get back to normal life. But 3 days after we got home, we both woke up at 3 in the morning to the sound of a rotary phone ringing. Our apartment doesn't have a landline. The building was constructed in 2019. It's all modern infrastructure, fiber optic internet, everything's digital. Nobody in the building has a landline because there's no phone jacks installed anywhere. But we both heard it clearly. That distinctive mechanical ring coming from our bedroom closet. I opened the closet door, and there was nothing inside, except our hanging clothes and shoes on the floor. The ringing stopped the second I opened the door. Chloe said we needed to move, needed to break our lease and find a new place immediately. I tried to calm her down, said it was stress and anxiety. We were both still rattled from the weekend. Our minds were playing tricks on us. A week later, Chloe called me from her office downtown, completely panicked and crying. She works as an accountant for a firm on King Street, sits in a cubicle with a standard office desk phone. She said the phone rang. She answered it like she does 100 times a day, and she heard our voices playing back to her. Both of us having the exact conversation we'd had in the cabin about whether we should leave or stay. She could hear herself saying we should just go, and me responding about how it was a long drive back, but she said there were other sounds underneath our voices, whispering that she couldn't make out, and words neither of us remembered saying. She left work immediately, didn't even tell her supervisor, just grabbed her bag and left. She hasn't been back to that office since. Yesterday I went on Airbnb to look up the listing, maybe leave a warning review or report it to the platform. The listing was completely gone, removed from the site. I tried searching for the host's profile, and that was deleted too. So I pulled up Google Maps and entered the exact address the host had given us. The map showed the dirt road and the general area. But when I zoomed in to where the cabin should be located, there was just forest. Switched to satellite view and same thing, just trees. Tried street view and found imagery from 2018 showing that location. All that was visible was an old stone foundation and the remains of a chimney, like a building had burned down years ago. No cabin, no structure at all, but we were there. We have photos on our phones from that weekend. Except when I tried to open them this morning, every single file was corrupted. Chloe's phone, same thing. All the photos we took, dozens of them, all showing as gray squares with error messages saying the files couldn't be displayed. We're still in our Toronto apartment, still on our lease for another 8 months. Chloe started seeing a therapist 2 weeks ago, told them the whole story expecting to be medicated or diagnosed with something. The therapist just listened and asked if we felt like we were in immediate danger. Chloe told her it feels like we brought something back with us from that place. The therapist asked what kind of something, and Chloe couldn't explain it. I've been doing research online, going down rabbit holes on forums about hauntings and attachments and things that follow people home. A month ago, I would have laughed at anyone talking about this stuff. Now I'm burning sage I bought from some shop on Queen West and sleeping with every light in the apartment turned on. Found one post on a paranormal subreddit about the Bancroft area, specifically about rentals near Silent Lake that have had issues. Nothing detailed, just vague mentions of people leaving early and getting bad feelings. One commenter mentioned staying at a cabin that had a phone that wouldn't stop ringing. And when they asked the host about it, afterward, the host insisted there was no landline on the property at all. Last week, I got a phone call while I was working from home. My cell phone, which works perfectly fine in Toronto. Unknown number with a local area code. Answered it without thinking, and there was silence. Then faintly in the background, I could hear that rotary phone bell ringing. Hung up immediately. The same number called back 3 more times. Blocked it. Then it started calling from different numbers. I've blocked 6 numbers so far, and they keep coming from new ones. I haven't told Chloe about the calls because she's already barely sleeping. Yesterday, our building superintendent knocked on our door. Guy named Micah, who's worked here since the building opened. He said the tenant in the unit directly below ours filed a noise complaint about a phone ringing at all hours, 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning, constant ringing. He asked us if we had a landline installed because obviously that's what it sounds like to them. I told him no, we don't have any landline. The building doesn't even have the infrastructure for it. He looked confused and said he could have sworn the sound was coming from our unit, even stood in our doorway for a minute listening, but didn't hear anything right then. After he left, we tore the apartment apart looking for any explanation. Checked every closet, looked under the bed, pulled out the stove and fridge to see behind them, checked inside the HVAC vents. Nothing. No phones anywhere except our cells. That night, at exactly 3 in the morning, we both woke up to the ringing again, and this time it was coming from inside the walls. Not from a specific location, but from everywhere at once, like the sound was embedded in the structure itself. Chloe packed a bag that morning and went to stay with her mom in Etobicoke. Said she'd come back when the ringing stops. I don't think it's going to stop. I'm still here in the apartment, can't really afford to break the lease and move. And part of me feels like leaving wouldn't matter anyway, because whatever this is, it's not tied to a location anymore. It's tied to us. Last night at 3:07 in the morning, my phone lit up with a text message. Unknown number, just 2 words. Answer it. I didn't respond, just turned my phone completely off. When I turned it back on this morning, there were 17 missed calls from different unknown numbers, all placed between 3 and 4 in the morning while my phone was powered down. That shouldn't be possible, but the call log shows them clearly. If you've ever stayed at a rental property in the Bancroft area and experienced anything like this, could you drop a comment? Incident report filed by Ranger Leonardo, Algonquin Provincial Park, Eastgate Station, October 17, 2024. Filed at 06:47 hours. This documentation concerns events occurring during overnight patrol of Eastern Sector access roads between approximately 01:33 and 03:17 hours. Standard operational protocol was followed until circumstances deviated substantially from normal parameters. I am requesting this report be reviewed by senior management before archiving, because the incident details fall significantly outside typical Ranger response situations, and I cannot provide satisfactory explanations for several documented observations. At 01:33 hours, I received radio communication from dispatch regarding a possible distress signal originating from the backcountry campsite area. A 911 call had been placed and then disconnected before essential information could be obtained. Caller identification traced to a registered backcountry camper. One Everett, male, age 34, resident of Ottawa, solo camping at designated campsite 17 on the Mizzy Lake Trail. His expected checkout date was listed as October 18th. Dispatch noted the call quality had been extremely poor with significant interference. The caller reportedly stated something was wrong and that he needed help before the line went dead. Multiple attempts to return the call went directly to voicemail. I proceeded to investigate per standard search and rescue protocol. I have been employed with Ontario Parks for 8 years, stationed at Algonquin's Eastgate facility since 2016. Prior to joining the Park Service, I completed 3 years with the Canadian Forces, which provided extensive training in emergency response, navigation, and crisis management. I am experienced with backcountry rescue operations, wildlife encounter protocols, lost hiker recovery, and medical emergency response in remote locations. I have filed hundreds of incident reports during my tenure. This is the first report of this nature I have submitted, and I am aware of how the contents will be perceived. I was operating Unit 17, a Ford F-150 patrol vehicle equipped with spotlight, comprehensive first aid supplies, emergency radio equipment, and all standard safety gear. The eastern sector had been unusually quiet that evening. Off-season camping periods typically result in reduced visitor numbers, primarily experienced local outdoors enthusiasts familiar with the park's layout and regulations. Only a handful of registered backcountry campsites showed active occupation. I drove to the Mizzy Lake Trail parking area, approximately 12 kilometers from the East Gate Station via Highway 60 and the subsequent access road. I arrived at Oro 1:51 hours. The parking lot contained one vehicle, a Honda CR-V with Ontario plates registered to Everett. The vehicle was locked with no visible signs of distress or forced entry. A valid camping permit was properly displayed on the dashboard showing all required information. Everything appeared completely normal and consistent with standard backcountry camping procedures. I proceeded to check the trailhead information kiosk, where all campers are required to sign in and document their planned route. Everett had signed in at 14:20 hours on October 16th, clearly noting his intended destination as Campsite 17, which is located approximately 3.8 kilometers from the parking lot via established trail. No other signatures appeared in the log since his entry. Weather conditions were favorable for a nighttime hike with temperature reading approximately -1 degree Celsius. Clear sky conditions, moon illumination at roughly 67%, and excellent overall visibility. The trail itself showed good condition with some minor ice formation on puddles and ground frost, but nothing that would impede travel. I made the operational decision to hike directly to Campsite 17 to perform a welfare check on Everett. I radioed dispatch with my action plan and estimated my arrival at the campsite for approximately Oro 2:30 hours. I began the hike at Oro 2:03 hours. The Mizzy Lake Trail represents one of the park's most frequently patrolled routes, and I have personally walked it several hundred times during various seasons and conditions. The trail maintains a well-marked path, moderate difficulty rating, and high popularity among day hikers. Navigation at night with appropriate lighting equipment is straightforward and presents minimal challenge to experienced personnel. At approximately Oro 2:18 hours, roughly 800 meters from the campsite coordinates, I observed fresh footprint impressions in the frost layer. The prints indicated movement away from the campsite direction, back toward the parking lot. Boot tread pattern and size appeared consistent with men's hiking boots, estimated size 10 or 11, which aligned with gear specifications Everett had listed on his camping permit noting size 11 footwear. The stride length measured unusually long, and toe impressions showed significant depth, strongly suggesting the person creating these prints had been moving at high speed, possibly running. I followed these prints for approximately 40 meters, at which point they terminated abruptly. The prints did not gradually fade, did not diverge from the trail into surrounding bush. They simply ended in the middle of the established path, as though the person had ceased to exist at that precise location. I documented this observation, but continued moving toward the campsite, reasoning that a logical explanation could be determined after locating Everett. I reached Campsite 17 at 02:31 hours. The site displayed clear and unambiguous evidence of active occupation. A red two-person tent of MEC manufacture was properly erected according to standard practices. The designated fire ring contained cold ashes from an earlier fire. A bear bag containing food supplies was correctly suspended from the appropriate tree branch at regulation height and distance from the trunk. I inspected the bag and found zero evidence of wildlife activity or attempted access. My flashlight beam revealed camping equipment visible through the tent's mesh ventilation window, including sleeping bag, backpack, and camp stove, all appearing undisturbed. Everett himself was not present at the campsite. I called out multiple times, clearly identifying myself as Ontario Parks personnel and stating I was responding to a distress call. No response was received. As I approached closer to the tent structure, I noticed an inconsistency that troubled me. The tent zipper was fully open from the interior, the entrance flap pushed outward, but Everett's hiking boots sat neatly arranged outside the tent entrance. If he had departed in a hurry, which the running footprint strongly suggested, the logical behavior would not include stopping to carefully remove boots and place them in an orderly fashion. I examined the tent interior and found his sleeping bag unzipped but unoccupied. Personal items remained inside, including wallet, vehicle keys, and mobile phone connected to a portable charging device. The phone screen displayed 3% battery remaining and showed multiple missed calls from our dispatch number. I took possession of the phone as evidence per established protocol. I radioed dispatch at 02:39 hours with a status update. Camper not located at designated site. All personal belongings present, including vehicle keys. Signs suggest hasty departure. But several details appear inconsistent with emergency evacuation, requesting guidance on search protocol. Dispatch asked whether I observed any signs of wildlife encounter. I responded negative. No tent damage, food properly stored and secured, no animal tracks or scat visible in immediate area. Dispatch instructed me to conduct a perimeter search within a 100-meter radius of the campsite, then return to station if no contact was established, with a full search team to be deployed at first light per standard operating procedure. I initiated the search pattern at 02:43 hours, moving in systematically expanding circles from the campsite center point. Visibility remained good with flashlight illumination, and some ground mist was beginning to form as ambient temperature continued dropping, creating a low-lying thermal layer surrounding the lake areas. At 02:51 hours, I heard vocalization emanating from approximately 150 meters north-northeast of the campsite location. I called out, asking if it was Everett. The vocalization repeated, but I found myself unable to properly characterize or classify the sound. It did not present as distinctly human speech, but simultaneously did not match any wildlife vocalizations I am trained to identify through extensive Ontario Parks education. I am thoroughly familiar with bear vocalizations, wolf pack communications, coyote calls, elk bugling, and moose sounds. This matched none of those patterns. The closest description I can provide is that it resembled a human voice attempting to form recognizable words, but lacking proper physiological structure to complete the sounds. Similar to hearing speech played in reverse and then forward again with the audio tracks overlapping. I proceeded toward the sound source with my hand positioned on the bear spray canister. At approximately 100 meters distance, the vocalization ceased entirely. At 75 meters, I observed a light source visible through the tree line. The light appeared consistent with a flashlight or LED headlamp, exhibiting slight bobbing movement that suggested handheld or head-mounted positioning. I called out again, clearly identifying myself as Ontario Parks personnel and requesting identification. The light source stopped moving and remained stationary. I approached to approximately 30 meters distance. The light source was definitely an LED headlamp, producing bright white illumination, positioned at roughly 5.5 feet elevation, which is consistent with an average adult male wearing the device. However, I could not visually identify any person behind or wearing the light source. The beam was directed toward my position, making it extremely difficult to see beyond the light itself into the darkness behind it. I asked if it was Everett and whether he had sustained any injuries. The light source began moving again, but not toward my position. It moved laterally, circling my location while maintaining the 30-meter distance. I tracked its movement with my flashlight beam but could not penetrate the darkness surrounding the headlamp light. just the light itself, moving through the trees in what appeared to be a perfect circle around my position. I reached for my radio to call for immediate backup, and at that moment, additional light sources appeared. 5 initially, then 8, then more than I could rapidly count. All LED headlamps, all positioned at human head height, all circling my position in absolute silence. No footsteps, audible on the frozen ground surface. No breathing sounds, no equipment noise that typically accompanies human movement through dense forest. Only the lights moving in synchronized patterns. I drew my service weapon, which I've carried for 8 years and have never discharged outside of mandatory training qualifications. I pointed it at the nearest light source and issued a direct order for whoever was present to stop moving and identify themselves immediately. Every light source stopped simultaneously. Perfect synchronization across all visible sources. I counted 12 distinct lights arranged in a rough circle approximately 25 to 30 meters from my position. My radio crackled with voice transmission. Male voice speaking in fragments. "Help, something wrong, can't find." I recognized the voice characteristics as matching the description provided of Everett's disconnected 911 call. But the transmission was breaking up severely, repeating the same word fragments in a loop. Help, wrong, help, can't, help. The transmission was emanating from all 12 positions simultaneously. Every light source was broadcasting the identical fragmented message in perfect synchronization. I have comprehensive protocols for wildlife encounters, injured hikers, lost children, and aggressive campers. There exists no protocol for this situation. I made a command decision to retreat to my vehicle and request an emergency response team. I walked backward, maintaining visual contact with the light sources. They did not follow and did not move, simply remained in their positions. At 50 meters distance, every light extinguished at the same instant. Total darkness, except for my flashlight. I ran the remaining 3.2 kilometers to the parking lot, reaching my vehicle at 03:17 hours. Everett's Honda CR-V was not in the parking lot. The lot was completely empty. I checked my documentation from initial arrival. I had photographed the license plate per standard protocol. I retrieved the photograph and confirmed the plate number matched Everett's registration exactly. But the vehicle was physically not present in the lot. I radioed dispatch immediately, reporting situation escalated. Camper's vehicle missing from secured lot, requesting OPP assistance and emergency search team deployment at first light. OPP arrived from Huntsville Detachment at 04:30 hours, 2 uniformed officers. I provided a complete briefing on all observations. I observed their skepticism, which I do not consider unreasonable given the circumstances. Missing camper, unexplained lights, inconsistent evidence patterns. They asked standard questions. Had I been alone during the entire patrol? Yes. Any possibility of disorientation or confusion? Negative. 8 years field experience, GPS unit confirmed my position throughout the entire incident. Could it have been wildlife? I provided detailed explanation of why nothing I observed was consistent with any known animal behavior patterns I am trained to recognize. Full search team deployed at 6 hours, consisting of 12 personnel, including OPP officers, additional park rangers, and volunteer search and rescue members from Whitney. We returned to campsite 17 and discovered the tent had been collapsed. Not damaged by wind, the weather had remained calm throughout the night, but methodically collapsed with poles removed and neatly folded beside the fire ring. All of Everett's gear was packed inside his backpack, which had been placed on top of the folded tent. His boots remained outside the tent entrance in their original position. His car keys remained inside the packed backpack. The search team conducted a 6-hour systematic grid search covering a 5-square-kilometer area. No sign of Everett was discovered. No additional tracks beyond the prints I had initially documented. No other physical evidence was located. At 11 hours, OPP received communication from Everett's emergency contact, his sister residing in Ottawa. She reported Everett had called her that morning at 8:20 hours from a coffee shop in Barry's Bay, stated he had left the park early due to not feeling well and was driving home. She confirmed it was definitely his voice. He had sounded somewhat off, but remained coherent, told her not to worry about him. OP attempted to contact Everett at the number he had used to call his sister. The phone was disconnected. Local OPP stationed in Barry's Bay investigated the Tim Hortons location on Highway 60, where he claimed to have made the call. Surveillance footage showed no individual matching his physical description that morning. Staff members did not recall serving him. 3 days following the incident, Everett's Honda CR-V was located at his apartment complex in Ottawa. Everett was discovered inside the vehicle, unresponsive. Paramedics transported him to Ottawa General Hospital, where he was pronounced deceased on arrival. The coroner determined cause of death as hypothermia. The outdoor temperature in Ottawa that day measured 12 degrees Celsius. His hiking boots were recovered from the vehicle's back seat. They were covered in frost in October, in Ottawa, where temperatures were well above freezing. Here is something critical that every backcountry camper should understand. Hypothermia can occur at temperatures well above freezing, especially when combined with wet conditions, wind, and exhaustion. The condition is called mild hypothermia, and it begins when core body temperature drops just 2 degrees below normal. At that stage, judgment becomes impaired, decision-making fails, and people often remove clothing or engage in paradoxical behavior that accelerates heat loss. Everett's case did not fit this pattern. The coroner's report classified the incident as accidental death due to environmental exposure. My incident report was filed, reviewed, and archived, with an official notation suggesting I may have experienced possible disorientation due to overnight patrol conditions, and that physical evidence suggested the camper had departed the site voluntarily. I did not contest the notation. I requested and received a transfer to a different district, which was granted. I am now stationed at Pinery Provincial Park near Lake Huron. The terrain is flat, the campgrounds are developed with full facilities, and there are no backcountry sites. I do not volunteer for overnight patrol duties anymore. 3 months after the incident, I received mail at my new park station. The envelope had no return address, but showed an Ottawa postmark. Inside was a single photograph showing Campsite 17 at Algonquin, taken from within the tree line looking toward the site. Night photography, poor image quality. In the photograph, I could clearly see myself standing beside Everett's tent, flashlight in hand, examining the interior. The photograph was time-stamped 02.38 hours, October 18, 2024. The exact time I was at that campsite performing the welfare check. I was alone that night. I was absolutely alone. I burned the photograph in my home fireplace. I did not file any supplementary report. I did not inform anyone. Last week, I received another envelope. Same handwriting, no return address. I have not opened it. It is currently sitting on my desk at the station. I look at it every single day, but I do not touch it. My supervisor asked yesterday if I was managing okay. I told her I was fine. She did not believe me, but chose not to press the issue. The envelope remains on my desk. Have you ever experienced something while camping that you still can't logically explain? Hey Walker, it's me. Listen, I know it's 4 in the morning, but I just left the motel in Cobalt and I need to tell someone what happened before I forget it, or convince myself it didn't happen, or whatever my brain's trying to do right now. I'm driving south on Highway 11, about 20 minutes out of town, heater cranked all the way up, and I keep checking the rearview mirror every few seconds, like something's following me. I'm going to tell you everything in order, even though it sounds completely insane, and I'm begging you not to delete this voicemail before you listen to the whole thing. I'm not high, I'm not drunk, I didn't hit my head or take any medication that would mess with my perception. This actually happened to me, and I have no explanation for any of it. You know, I've been planning this cobalt photography trip for months, right? I kept talking about it, showing you reference photos, explaining how perfect the location is for the kind of abandoned industrial stuff I shoot. The town's got this incredible history, all these skeletal mine structures from the silver boom that started back in 1903. Head frames sticking up against the sky like metal sculptures, old ore cart tracks half buried in snow, tailings piles that look like small mountains. It's got that authentic ghost town aesthetic without being completely abandoned because about 1,000 people still live there year-round. I drove up from Sudbury yesterday morning, December 3rd. Took Highway 17 east to where it meets Highway 11 north. Got to Cobalt around 2 in the afternoon. The drive's maybe 3 hours depending on road conditions and how fast you push it. I checked into the only motel that was open, this place called the Prospect Motel. It's run by this woman who looked about 80 years old. Deeply wrinkled face, barely even glanced at my driver's license before she handed me an actual metal key, not a key card, but a physical brass key with a plastic tag. Room 7. The room smelled exactly like you'd expect. Decades of cigarette smoke embedded in the curtains mixed with industrial-strength pine sol cleaner. I didn't care, Walker. You know I've stayed in way worse places for my photography work. I spent the afternoon driving around town, scouting locations, shot maybe 300 photos on my Canon. The weather was absolutely perfect for what I do. Overcast sky giving me that flat diffused light, fresh snow covering all the rusty ugly parts, making everything look almost beautiful in a desolate way. The mine structures looked incredible through my viewfinder. I posted a few shots to Instagram around 5:47. You can go check my account and see the timestamp if you want to verify I'm not making this up. Grabbed dinner at the only restaurant that was open. A diner connected to the gas station on the main road. Maybe 6 other people in there, all locals. Every single one of them turned to stare at me when I walked through the door. I'm completely used to that by now. Small, isolated towns. Stranger walks in with expensive camera equipment. Obvious outsider. I ordered a burger, ate it as fast as possible without being rude, paid cash, and got out. Back to the motel by 7. My plan was simple. Spend the evening editing photos on my laptop. Get decent sleep. Wake up early enough to catch sunrise shots of the head frames because the sun rises around 7:30 up there in December, and the golden hour light would create perfect silhouettes. I was sitting on the bed with my laptop open working through the photos when the motel room phone rang. Not my cell phone. The landline phone sitting on the nightstand. I didn't even realize the room had a working landline until it started ringing. It was 11:47 p.m. according to my laptop clock. I answered it, which I know seems stupid in retrospect, but when a phone rings, your automatic instinct is just to pick it up. There was a woman's voice on the other end speaking French. I took 2 years of French in high school, but I'm terrible at it. I caught maybe 1 word in 3. Something like, hello, looking for someone. I told her sorry. Wrong room probably, I don't really speak French. She kept talking in French, her voice getting more urgent and faster. Then the line just went dead. I hung up and figured it was a crossed wire in the ancient phone system, or maybe someone with a wrong number. 10 minutes later, the phone rang again. Same woman's voice, but this time she was speaking English, heavy Quebecois accent, broken sentence structure. She said I couldn't stay here. I asked who she was trying to reach. She said me, said I cannot stay, said they are in the walls. I hung up the phone and immediately unplugged it from the wall jack, pulled the cord right out. My heart was absolutely pounding, but I tried to rationalize it. Told myself it was locals messing with tourists, or someone with mental health issues, or just a bizarre coincidence of wrong numbers. At 12:30, there was knocking on my door. Not aggressive pounding, just steady rhythmic knocking. Knock, 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 pause, knock, knock, knock. I went to the peephole and looked out, and the hallway was completely empty. The knocking continued. I yelled through the door asking who was there, and it stopped immediately. Dead silence. I tried calling the front desk from my cell phone using the motel's Wi-Fi since there's no cell signal anywhere in Cobalt. It rang 4 times and kicked to a generic voicemail. I stayed on the bed with my back pressed against the headboard. Told myself I just needed to survive until morning, and then I'd pack up and leave. At 1:15 a.m., the motel phone started ringing again. It was still unplugged, sitting on the nightstand with no cord attached to it. But that mechanical bell inside was ringing clear as anything. I picked up the handset, and there was no cord dangling from it. No connection to any wall jack. But when I put it against my ear, the woman's voice was there. She said I was in the wrong room. I asked what she meant. She said, "This is room 7. I was supposed to be in room 5. I looked at the key in my hand, brass tag clearly stamped with the number 7. Then she said something that made my stomach drop. She said I couldn't leave now because they had moved the hallway. I know how that sounds, Walker. I know. But I went to the door and looked through the peephole, and the hallway was different. The layout was wrong. The walls were closer together than they had been. The lighting was this sickly yellow color instead of the white fluorescent lights I'd walked under earlier. And the carpet pattern was completely different. When I'd checked in that afternoon, the carpet had this faded floral pattern, roses or something. Now, through the peephole, I was looking at geometric shapes, diamonds and triangles. I unlocked the deadbolt and the chain and the door handle lock and opened the door just a crack to see better. The hallway was empty, but the perspective was off somehow, like looking at a photograph that's been stretched in editing. The dimensions didn't make physical sense. There was light coming from under the door of room 8 directly across the hall. I could hear movement inside, footsteps, maybe multiple people walking around. Then I heard a voice from inside room 8, muffled through the door but clear enough to recognize. It was my voice, saying hello, asking who's there. The exact words I'd said 20 minutes earlier when I'd responded to the knocking on my door. I shut my door immediately and locked everything again. Shoved the desk chair under the door handle, even though I know that only works in movies. Sat on the bed and checked my phone. 1:33 a.m., Wi-Fi still showing connected. I opened Instagram and scrolled to my post from that evening with the mine photos. There were new comments. The most recent one had been posted 2 minutes ago, and it said, "I need to leave that room right now." The username was Prospect Motel Cobalt. I clicked on the account, and it showed 0 posts, 0 followers, 0 following. Account created December 2024. I tried to reply to the comment, but when I went back, the account had vanished. I refreshed the post, and the comment was gone too. Tried to screenshot it, but I wasn't fast enough. The motel phone rang again, even though it was still unplugged and sitting there. I didn't answer it. It rang 23 times. I counted every single one, then stopped. Silence for about 40 minutes. I packed all my stuff, put on my jacket and boots, secured my camera equipment in its bag, got completely ready to leave. I sat by the window, watching the parking lot. My Nissan was still there, covered in fresh snow but visible under the single parking lot light. At 2:47 a.m., someone tried my door handle. I watched it turn and rattle against the locks. Whoever was on the other side didn't knock, didn't say anything, just kept methodically trying the handle, turning it back and forth, testing each lock. I yelled that I was calling the police. The handle stopped moving. I heard footsteps going down the hall, slow and deliberate, not trying to be quiet. I actually did try to call OPP then, Googled the non-emergency number. The call connected, rang twice, and a woman answered saying Ontario Provincial Police, Cobalt District. I started explaining. Strange phone calls, someone trying my door, feeling unsafe. The dispatcher interrupted me and said, "There is no Cobalt detachment. The nearest OPP is in Haileybury, 20 kilometers south." I said, "But you just identified yourself as Cobalt District." She said, "No, ma'am, this is Haileybury. Can you describe your exact location?" I gave her the motel's address. Long pause on the line. Then she said that building was condemned in 2019. There is no operating motel at that address. The call disconnected. I made my decision right then. I wasn't waiting for daylight. I grabbed my bag and camera case and opened the door. The hallway was back to normal. Same layout as when I'd checked in. Floral carpet, white fluorescent lights humming overhead. Room 8 across the hall was dark, no light under the door. I walked fast toward the front office, not quite running but close. The office was empty, no clerk behind the desk, just a small television playing static. The clock on the wall said 11:35 p.m. My phone said 3:02 a.m. I went outside into the cold, and my car was in the lot, but it was parked 3 spaces away from where I'd left it. I know exactly where I parked, Walker, directly under the light pole in the space closest to my room. Now it was 3 spaces east. My keys worked, and the car started fine. I backed out fast, and my headlights swept across the motel building. Every single room had lights on. All 12 rooms, every window blazing with light, curtains open. But I couldn't see anyone inside any of them. Just empty rooms with lights on. I drove toward the access road that leads to Highway 11, probably going too fast for the snow conditions, but I didn't care. I checked my rearview mirror, and the motel lights stayed visible for maybe 2 kilometers. All 12 windows lit up like a display. At about 5 kilometers out, I looked back and the entire motel was dark, completely black. Like someone had cut the main power the instant I got far enough away. I drove straight to New Liskeard, 30 kilometers south, and pulled into a 24-hour gas station. Just sat in my car shaking. I pulled out my phone and checked Instagram. My post from earlier that evening was completely gone. Not deleted by me, just gone, like I'd never posted it at all. But the photos were still on my camera's SD card. I turned on the camera to check them and tried to preview them on the little screen. Every single file was corrupted. All 300 shots from that afternoon. Just gray static where images should be. That's when I called you and started leaving this message. By the time I finish recording this, I'll be somewhere around Temagami, about 100 kilometers south of Cobalt. I'm going straight to North Bay, getting a room at a Holiday Inn or Best Western, something corporate and normal. Ground floor with multiple exits and other guests nearby. I Googled the Prospect Motel while I was pulled over at that gas station. Found a local news article from March 2019. Headline said Historic Cobalt Motel to close permanently. The article explained the building had been sold and the new owners were planning demolition due to structural damage and possible heavy metal contamination from decades of proximity to mine tailings. There was a quote from the last owner, an elderly woman who'd operated it since the 1970s, saying she was sad to see it go, but it was time to let the old places rest. The article included a photograph of the building. Same motel I stayed in last night. Exact same faded blue siding, same hand-painted sign saying Prospect Motel vacancy. But the article was dated almost 6 years ago. I called the Cobalt town office once. They opened at 8:30 this morning. I was already in North Bay by then. Checked into a Holiday Inn, lying on the bed with every light in the room turned on. The town clerk was polite but confused about why I was asking. She confirmed the Prospect Motel building was demolished in fall 2020. The foundation is still there, but the structure is completely gone. The site is fenced off because of contamination concerns from the old mining operations. She asked why I wanted to know, and I said historical research and hung up before she could ask more questions. Here's something everyone should know about old mining towns like Cobalt. The silver boom brought incredible wealth, but also left behind serious environmental hazards. When mining operations extract ore, they create tailings, which are the leftover materials after the valuable minerals are removed. These tailings often contain toxic heavy metals like arsenic, lead, and cadmium. In Cobalt specifically, there are over 70 abandoned mine sites within the town boundaries and the surrounding area. Many old buildings, especially those built during the mining era, are contaminated with these substances. Exposure can cause serious health problems, which is why so many old structures have been condemned and demolished over the past 2 decades. I'm telling you this because it's the only rational explanation I have left. Maybe there was something in that building, some kind of contamination that caused hallucinations or affected my perception. But that doesn't explain the demolished building or the missing Instagram post or the corrupted photos. I checked my credit card statement online this morning. There's no charge from any motel. But I remember paying cash. I handed that old woman 2 $50 bills for one night. The $100 is still in my wallet right now. I never spent it. Walker, I don't know what to do with this information. I'm a photographer. I'm a rational person who stayed alone in dozens of weird abandoned locations. I don't believe in haunted places, or I didn't until last night. I'm asking you not to tell anyone else about this voicemail. I already sound insane enough without other people knowing. But I needed to tell someone, needed to document it somewhere outside my own head. So if anything happens, if I decide to go back there to try to understand what I experienced, at least someone knows. One more thing, and this is why I am actually terrified right now. This morning around 9 a.m., I got an Instagram notification. Someone tagged me in a photo. The account was Prospect Motel Cobalt, the same account that had commented before and then disappeared. The account is active again. It has one post. The photo is of a motel room, dated December 4th, 2024. Timestamp shows 1:47 a.m. The photo shows me, Walker. It shows me asleep in the bed at that motel, taken from the doorway, looking into the room. But I was never asleep in that room. I never slept. I was awake the entire time. The photo has 0 likes, 0 comments. I reported the account to Instagram for harassment. Instagram sent back an automated response saying they found no violation of community guidelines. I've blocked the account now. I might delete Instagram entirely. I might delete all my social media. Walker, if you get this message, please call me back. I don't want to be alone with this. End of voicemail. Timestamp 9:34 a.m., December 4th, 2024. If you've ever stayed somewhere and later found out the place didn't exist anymore, what happened? Thanks for watching Silent Fears. These stories come from real people who experience things they can't explain. If you've had a similar encounter, share your story in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more true horror stories. Turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Remember, the most terrifying stories are the ones that actually happened. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next one.